What's going on, guys? We're back at it again with another episode of Combos with Dr. Andy. And today we're going to be talking about posture because all of you jabronis have terrible posture. So first and foremost, want Andy to kind of go over why does our posture suck? Why do we even care about posture? And then how can we fix it? Because we all need some help.
Yeah. So first off, why do we all need good posture? One, it's going to lead to better function. So without going too deep into the weeds, most of us develop less than optimal posture just based on sedentary lifestyle. We all sit, right? We all lay down, but maybe we don't sleep on our backs, right? And that's a controversial topic, I guess, if we're not really going to go over here. But a lot of us tend to sleep on our sides, stomachs, all different types of weird positions, probably bend down, reach for stuff in the less optimal position, etc. But for most of us, sedentary lifestyles, right? Working at long hours at the desk, whether it be at home or at the office, or driving, commuting. So I'll kind of label it this way. So the biggest things that I see, and I'll go into a little bit more detail with this, but as I see upper cross syndrome and lower cross syndrome. When I say upper cross, I mean upper body. Lower cross, I mean lower body. So I'm going to parlay it and make it simple for muscles. So upper cross syndrome, think like rounded back, shoulders rolled forward, right? Chest kind of caved in, head position is pushed forward out over your center of gravity, right? So think about your, 60, 70, 80-year-old male, right? Who's kind of looks like a turtle shell, okay? Upper cross syndrome. So really stretched out and weak upper back muscles. When I say upper back, I mean like the muscles in between your shoulder blades, right? And then tight, short, constricted chest muscles, so like your pecs, okay? Now, upper traps, which are the ones that attach from the back of your head down into the mid part of your spine, okay? Those are going to be tight because they're going to try and pull your head up so you can see in front of you instead of looking down at your feet. And then for lower cross syndrome, so remember lower cross, lower body, right? You have weak abdominal muscles. When I say abdominal muscles, like a weak six-pack muscle. Really tight hip flexors, which we've talked about in previous episodes, right? Your psoas, your iliopsoas muscle, okay? And then glutes are basically non-existent, okay? So if you sit a lot, sitting is the number one way to just completely deactivate your glutes, okay? Think about sitting on them, you're squishing them, you're turning them off, okay? And then tight quadriceps, and then weak hamstrings. So that position is going to almost kind of pull you into a hinged forward position, putting a lot of stress in your low back, okay? And people oftentimes feel tight hamstrings with this position, but the tightness is coming from a sense of being stretched out, not necessarily because they're tight and strong. So think rubber band. You pull a rubber band nice and taut, it's tight, but the last thing you want to do to a tight rubber band is stretch it even more because you're exacerbating the problem. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
James?
Correct. Yep, it does.
Cool.
Definitely.
So, and as far as, that's simplicity. That's what I see a lot. Upper cross syndrome and lower cross syndrome, whether somebody just has one or the other or both. Okay. A few things in general that I often recommend for people that just have this, that they can easily do. One is if they have upper cross syndrome, so tight chest, rounded back, right, is they can do the doorway stretch. So they place one hand or one arm out in between a doorway, right, and then they lean forward through that door frame, stretching out their entire front part of their chest. You can do one arm at a time, both arms at a time. It's a great stretch. The other thing, if you have access to this, and it's fairly cheap if you just buy it off Amazon or even go to Walmart, is buy a pull-up bar for your house. One that just attaches and hinges. It doesn't need to be drilled in. You just hang from a bar, right? You just hang from a bar. So those are two great things that I easily recommend for somebody to do if they have upper cross syndrome or bad posture with their upper body. Lower cross syndrome, for one, I have them try to sit less. All right, that's number one. If you can't, right, let's say you have you're stuck at a desk for 8 hours plus a day or whatever it is,
Yeah,
right?
or you're a
Try to
cop
get up
and you're in the car and you can't, like you just can't be standing all the time. You're on patrol, you're driving around.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, great. So if you're in a profession that you have to be seated, right? So one is stretching out your hip flexors,
Mhm.
right? And you can just click on YouTube and just type in hip flexor stretch. You'll get a drop down plethora of a bunch of different stretches for your hip flexor stretch. And then two, I know everybody likes to take exercise as like, oh gosh, well, I can't do that because I have no time, right? But it's simple. Just start doing just walk. Running would be great because running actually activates your glutes. Sprinting would be the best thing, right? But if you don't even want to get outside, just do some glute bridges, single leg, both leg, whatever it is. So I usually recommend those things. People pick one or multiple, or they pick none. I don't know, right? But I recommend they do one or more of those at the bare minimum. So those are some really simple things that I would say everybody should be doing at the bare minimum if this is your lifestyle and if you suffer from either one of these postural positions. So now, James, tell me about a little bit about what you do personally to kind of, because I know you've worked extensively on your posture and even just yourself as far as mobility. Mm-hmm. So what are some things that you do individually?
Well, I definitely hang. And I would recommend, if anyone's going to hang, that you regress down to like having your feet supported a little bit. So if you put it in a doorway, right? If you're 6 foot tall, you're going to be able to touch the ground with your hands on the bar. So my recommendation there is, like, if you've never hung, right, 2 things are going to happen. One, you're going to feel like it's pain in your shoulders. And number 2, your hands are going to feel like they're in pain. Neither of them are really pain, right? Your hands, you're probably just slipping because you don't have grip strength. And your shoulders, it's just tight, okay? It's outside of a few scenarios, it's not going to hurt you, okay? And if you have a few scenarios like you had to have your bicep reattached and other stuff going on and you're in recovery, maybe don't do this, okay? Maybe use common sense and don't fucking do this because that's not going to help you, right? If you have a torn labrum, maybe, I don't know, Andy might have a different idea. Maybe you have torn shit in your shoulder. You don't fucking hang. Maybe you talk to somebody that's a specialist before you hang. Okay, let's get that on the table. But I hang there, and you can regress to have your feet supported on something, or your feet kind of on the ground. You can put your heels there, and then bring your feet out, still keeping them on the ground until you get to a place where you're comfortable hanging like that. Then bring your feet off the ground, right? To have your knees, like your feet crossed in the doorway, and you're completely hanging off. When you do that, it's way harder than touching the ground at all. But regress to where you need to. The other thing that I do is I have a slant board to the left of me. Okay. I love to sit heels elevated in the bottom, right? Without butt wink. Okay. What do I mean by that? Where your hips are not, like, your pelvis is not turned under. So if you notice, if you're super, 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 super tight, there's a high probability that when you squat, your butt turns under. Okay. That's not going to, sitting at the bottom of a squat with your butt turned under, you might as well just not do it. Coming up to a place where you can be a little active and your butt doesn't turn under, and your heels are elevated, I sit at the bottom of a squat, right? Do my very best and go heel supported, on whatever I need to. And if you need to regress, you can get a squatty potty. You can sit on a desk and get a squatty potty and put your feet on that. You might have to regress down there. There's nothing wrong with that. But those are 2 things that I do. And then knees over toes split squats for knees to keep myself open there, walking in general, and then backwards walking too. That's another thing that I really like to do.
Crucial.
And all of that requires, like, every bit of equipment that I just named, right, will cost you a total, if you use some plywood, of like maybe $50 max for everything. It really won't be that difficult. And you can get a like a door tib bar, or excuse me, a door. It's from the tib bar guy. It basically has like not a weight, but like a rubber thing on the other side. You slide it up under the door, and you can do Nordics, and you can do other stuff with that, like right in your house. And that's like $15. You can buy off Amazon. Same thing.
Nordics, you're talking about hamstring curls, correct?
Yeah, reverse Nordics. Yeah.
Okay.
You can do that, but also you can do, I think they're reverse Nordics. What do we do at? Yeah. You can also do that. Yeah. Same thing that just goes right under. Like it goes right up under the door. So one side has basically a wedge, then it's connected to basically what crossover symmetry is. Well, not really that. It's more of like a strap, like paracord strap to the other side where you can put your feet, your toesies, either back towards you, right? Or down, either one, or your heels in it.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, to go off, James, what you were just saying there for yourself, right? A lot of this stuff is fairly cheap, right? 50
Under a
bucks,
hundred
I'm sure.
dollars, dude. Under $100
Yeah.
for everything I just named.
Right. And you can, if you're clever, I mean, I would love a slant board. I'm surprised I haven't bought one by now, but I've just used books or like the edge of a stair, right? Maybe my heels. Just get your heels up, you know? And as far as like the butt wink goes, for people that, like James said, if you're super, super tight, sometimes that soft tissue restriction that's actually pulling your pelvis under, or sometimes it's just the bony structures that are kind of running into each other, causing your pelvis to loop under and give you that butt wink. So, like James says, find a position. If you're going to do that, find a position where you don't have that butt wink and just hang out there. So, the biggest thing that I find with posture is that, spend some time, stretching these joints, these positions opposite in the position that you find yourself in a lot of times. So if you find yourself rounding when you're seated, right, spend some time going into extension or arching back the other way. If you're sitting, the tissues that are in front, such as your hip flexor and your quads, right, they're going to get short, they're going to get tight, they're going to get what's called fibrotic. It just means, hardened and stiff and short. Spend some time stretching those open. People often ask, like, well, I don't know how to stretch my hip. Well, first of all, let's define the hip, right? Let's define the front part of your thigh, right? And then put yourself into a position where you feel that stretching. It's not, I hate to say it, but it's not rocket science, for people. So like, don't be afraid to experiment. That's how all this stuff was basically found out in the first place, was through experimentation.
For sure.
But a lot of the stuff is super cheap, if not free, right? You have access to it. You don't need to go anywhere for it. You can just either do it in your house or go outside. And like James says, walk backwards. Not a lot of people do that. Getting lubrication into your joints through movement is the number one thing you can do to stave off degeneration, right? Outside of nutrition and moving properly, right? Just full range of motion, consistent movement over a period of time, spending time in the positions opposite of the poor ergonomic positions you're in are going to help you overall. So anything else that you want to kind of share or explain or kind of dive into, James?
Yeah, the only other thing the only other thing that I do that I forgot to mention was that I do take a foam roller. Again, that can be combined in the things that are under $100 total. Put a foam roller parallel to the spine in between my shoulder blades and do the same thing that Andy was talking about inside a doorway. I prefer to do it more passively on a foam roller up my spine, as opposed to putting both hands on there. I feel really weird, and sometimes I get like it's super tight, and I like to do it one at a time. It takes forever when I do that. So I would rather just go completely open, either goalpost, right? Either goalpost or completely out, right? Or a combination of I's, T's, Y's positioning. Okay. You're not actually like flossing or anything, but opening yourself up in different positions that your shoulder already goes when you're in the gym or when you're doing day-to-day things in planes that it moves. Because if you're wrenching down, you're gonna have to go lefty loosey and go the other way, right? If you want full range of motion. And so I think the easiest way to do that is to not put yourself in more discomfort and literally just lay on a foam roller up your spine, straight up. Put your butt on the end of it, put your head on it so that your neck is not just conking to the floor, right? Get in a position where you can do that. If you're over 6'5", I don't know what to tell you. Good luck. Anyone under that should be fine. And I like to passively do that, because then I can also listen to an audiobook and not feel like I have to put pressure, or feel like I've got to like lean into and hope I don't tear something in the doorway. And I know that sounds aggressive, but for me in the doorway, it ain't it. So I just do that on the ground instead.
So how often would you say you do that personally? And then recommendation as far as, should someone do that every day? Is there too much for someone to do that? Or is this like a, hey, every time I'm tight, I do this only?
Nowadays, probably every time I'm tight. But when I was in a position where I couldn't get a barbell overhead because my shoulders were rolled forward, like the position would be out in front of my nose, not overhead, I did it every day.
Yeah. Okay.
When I couldn't comfortably hang from a pull-up bar, I did it every day. My recommendation would be to do more as I'm saying, not as I'm doing. I would do it every day.
Yeah.
Especially passively. Like, it's different to actively load, but passively, I don't see a reason why you wouldn't.
Yeah. There's no harm in doing it every day. I wanted the viewers or anybody who's listening to kind of just get, an idea of like, hey, what does James do? How frequent? Because I think sometimes people think that, we somehow don't have lives outside of just this podcast or just what we do as a profession. So we're also human too, right? So, you started out, you saw a problem, you identified it, and then you attacked it full bore. And then the better you felt, you kind of like backed off in frequency. But
and
it's always there.
And it's a daily deposit. Like I know that my overhead position for overhead squats and for squat snatches, I know that it's limited by 3 things. I know both of those are limited by 3 things. And if I want those positions to improve, I know what I need to do to improve them outside of just a session, because I can spend 10 to 15 minutes and warm up and get myself to as good as I feel if I do it every day. The difference is it won't stay, right? It won't stay after the session.
How long would you say? So just I guess for an example's sake, how long would you say each session of stretching, of mobilizing, is?
Oh, I mean, you talking about before workouts or just in the day?
Let's say when you first started doing this every day, how long would you spend on it each day?
Oh, I mean, I physically couldn't hang on the pull-up bar for more than 30 seconds at a time. And I could only do like 3 or 4 of those in a row max before my hands were like, ow, ow, ow. So like, that's like maybe 2 to 3 minutes max. And then I basically hit 2-minute holds on everything else. Now, can you go longer? And should you go longer if you have the time? Yeah, you should. But for me, I mean, it's like, I can spend 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening and get almost as solid as I've ever felt. But it's not going to come day one. About 3 to 4 weeks of doing that every day, twice a day, you're going to feel like butter.
Yeah. I would say, that's great. 2 minutes, right? It's not that long a time, but I would say for people that are out there being like, well, I don't have 5 minutes, right? Well, you probably have 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. And 5 seconds is going to be better than nothing.
Correct.
So, and I would say, and I tell this to patients all the time, consistency is key, right? Mm-hmm. So, whether it's 5 seconds, 5 minutes, an hour, right? I'd rather have you do 5 seconds every day versus 10 minutes, 30 minutes once a week.
Boom.
So agreed. Would you agree with that?
100%, because you're talking about waiting till you get tighter to then try to open up to get to a place where if you just hammered on it every day, right, the likelihood that you establish a habit is higher. Psychologically, you'll feel better. And then number 3, you'll probably end up doing it more if you commit to an action that's too small to fail.
Yeah.
To do it more. You'll end up doing it more. You'll catch yourself doing it more than you thought you would when you told us that you didn't have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, it's like brushing your teeth, right? We all do it. We don't wait for a cavity to show up and then we're like, oh crap, now I got to brush.
Yeah. And I hate brushing my teeth, dude, but I like that I've never had a cavity and I like that I don't have any. And so what do? I continue to brush my teeth because I know that if I stop, something will happen.
Touche. Yeah. That sounds good, man. That sounds like that's where we should leave for people.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. It's daily deposits, a penny every day rather than a nickel or a dime every 10 days. Like it does you more good holistically to hammer it every day, even if it's a small amount of time. So appreciate y'all coming. And we'll see y'all next time. Peace.